So hi everybody, I'm Elena Cañadas. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist at Achille Interactive, and today I will be discussing how we at Achille develop digital therapeutics using cognitive neuroscience principles from theory to practice. So neuroscientists, we study the brain and behavior using different frameworks, and most of you neuroscientists, you will say that there is no one framework that fits all. So any framework must be rooted in science, but also be a good fit for describing a certain principle, and such as how, for instance, in our case, how a digital therapeutic can influence attention. And what I'm trying to show in this slide here is just an holistically representation of all the system of our brain that help us navigate the world, interact with people, decide what to do next, and react to things. And we try to link those different domains to how we could develop a technology that specifically target some of those areas and then link those areas to a specific disease population that we think that we could help the most. So it is interesting to represent, this attentional control as an interdependent combination of functions, namely the focus, the interference processing, and the multitasking or task switching. So think about focus. This is literally paying attention to the task at hand, or using a sport metaphor. So when we are playing tennis or we're watching tennis, the more important thing that you have to do is to follow the ball. And this is an example of selective attention. But all of you know, tennis is not just one play. So literally, this is a whole match. So you have to actually require and use sustained attention. So when we think about interference processing, this is literally a prioritization task. And nowadays, we're all constantly using this skill. So we are doing a video conference summit right now. So we are listening to the presenter, myself, but our phone, they can start ringing at any time, and we should be able to avoid this distraction. And that is an example of inhibition. At the same time, it is our child or our spouse come in the room, ask something to us while we are in the meeting, in the middle of the meeting. We need to be able to monitor the information that he or they are telling us, and we have to go back to our talk. And in this case, if we are not able to avoid this distraction, we are not able to resolve the conflict. And finally, integrating the focus and the interference processes. Well, actually, we need to be flexible. We need to be able to do two separate things at the same time. For instance, listening to the presenter, taking notes, and that will be an example of multitasking. And as we have here already from the previous presenter, the brain has the potential to change through experience. And video games are a great tool to create those experiences. Further, so research has shown that the game-based clinical therapies may positively impact the brain, not only their function, but also the structure. And additionally, we know that the current approach, whether they are pharmacological or not, may not be an option for different reasons, whether they cannot tolerate the adverse events or access, like Pat was mentioning before. So in those cases, digital intervention are being used and in form of the video game as an alternative or as an adjunct to traditional therapies. And as we have here, and at this point is where multi, inter, and transdisciplinarity become especially relevant, as Harry was mentioning at the beginning of his talk. We need to be able to just present in here, for instance, a product life cycle that we use at Achille. So in general, what we present at forefront of our roadmap is the need to develop the product that have to be scientifically rooted, focusing on answer a specific patient's complaint. So those products are easily integrated within the caregivers and the healthcare provider ecosystem, because if that's not the case, they become a burden and they will not be able to use it, to monitor, or even to evaluate whether they are efficacious or not. So assuring this type of information it's not only about the efficacy, but it's also about how they engage. So this is what Pat was mentioning, right? Are people able to be attending those therapies? Are they being able to play their therapies? And this is the relevant information that is important as well, right? Because it could help us to evaluate whether those products, they could be interesting to create new coverage, to talk about all this brain health, but also to, are they able to be covered, by different insurance. So developing this type of roadmap to support the patient at different stages, this is especially relevant. Evaluate the utility of the technology across the different production cycle, and continually track what are the unmet needs. It's an example of how this convergent science applied to digital therapeutic, it is used to address, for instance, cognitive impairments. So concretely at Akili, so we use the Attentional Framework that I presented before, and scientists, game designers, user and patient research, and the clinical team, we came together to try to translate cognitive tasks that they have been traditionally used to focus on, actually, no pun intended, on focus, interference, and multitasking into the game mechanics that can facilitate usability and engagement, but without forgetting that the clinical unmet need for the specific patient that we need to target. And we designed a digital therapeutic that adjusts difficulty to each patient individual performance. And as the patient improves through the game or encounter a specific challenge, so the specific algorithms that they're analyzing the data second by second, they're able to adapt and trigger an optimal experience. And they can lead to plasticity, hopefully, and we'll repeat this in a closed loop intervention. So therefore the challenge continue through the intervention. So here I'm just presenting some data from some of our 2 clinical trials focusing on ADSD. On the left, you can see data on a randomized control trial comparing our digital therapeutic versus an active control following a 4 weeks intervention in kids that they were 8 to 12 years old with ADSD. And the result indicated that this therapeutic has significant effect improving the cognitive domain for which the game was specifically designed for, attention, as measured with the test of variable of attention. On the right, you can see data from an open label study in kids 8 to 14 years old, also diagnosed with ADSD. And the main goal of this study was actually to evaluate whether the improvement that we saw on the randomized control trial actually transferred to ADSD-related impairment, and whether there is an additional durability of effect. So to do that, so we evaluated 3 months of intervention, where the second month actually was a treatment pause. And the result indicated that the significant improvement perceived in the first month of the intervention remained and even continued to show additional improvement during the treatment pause. An additional benefit was observed following a second month of intervention. Again, important is this to know that across both studies, it is not only the efficacy, but it's also the compliance. So we see that both study compliance is relatively high, but there is room for improvement, right? Especially when it is kind of like a multiple treatment cycle. So we need to keep working on that. And also the intervention was evaluated very safe. So there was no serious adverse events. And actually, there were very small percentage of adverse events, mostly frustration because of the difficulty of the game that continues to challenge the kids, and some headache, and another small thing. So finally, to summarize, so the digital therapeutic are a creative and immersive experience capable to support neuroplasticity and resilience. They can be developed in a way that is personalized and adaptive, using algorithms to improve specific cognitive domains. And I believe this is just the beginning of digital therapeutic. This is a great potential for expansion and scalability to different platforms and into other disease areas. But it's important to keep patient-centric and understanding the responsibility that comes with the ability to develop these type of products.